My fiancé mocked my dead mother during our engagement dinner, so I called off the wedding publicly and walked out while everyone sat in stunned silence. I'm a 29-year-old man who always dreamed of one moment, standing beside the woman I love while my mother smiled through happy tears. Proud that I'd found someone who treated me right, but life doesn't always give you neat endings. 3 years ago, I lost my mom to breast cancer. It wasn't sudden. We fought for 2 brutal years. Chemo, hospitals, nights spent sleeping in waiting rooms. I watched the strongest woman I knew shrink into someone who could barely lift a spoon. I held her hand when she passed. I felt the warmth leave her fingers. Since then, there's been a silence in my life. Not just grief, absence. My dad and I never had that emotional bond. He's one of those men who thinks vulnerability is weakness. So I carried the loss quietly, and then came Natalie. We met at a mutual friend's birthday dinner. She was magnetic, confident, funny, elegant. Everything about her felt like light. She laughed at my dry humor, asked deep questions, didn't flinch when I talked about my mom. For the first time in years, I felt seen. 6 months into dating, she told me, "I think your mom would have adored me." I smiled so hard my face hurt. I believed her. I believed she understood that my mother wasn't just a memory. She was part of the framework that built me. I thought Natalie saw that too. I thought she respected that. When I proposed, I visited my mom's grave first. I stood there holding the ring, whispering every word I wished she could hear. She's kind. She gets me. I think you'd approve. I wanted to believe that so badly. But grief has a way of sharpening your senses. And if I had listened to that quiet ache in my gut back then, maybe I would have seen what was coming, because the first red flag came wrapped in laughter, and I ignored it. The first time Natalie joked about my mom, it was so subtle I didn't even register it as cruel. We were watching a home video I'd found buried in my laptop, one where my mom was baking with me when I was maybe 8. I was covered in flour, grinning like an idiot. Natalie leaned her head on my shoulder, giggled, and said, "Wow, your mom really raised a kitchen disaster." I laughed, because it felt like teasing, like playful partner stuff. But over the next few months, the comments came more often, more pointed. If I ever got quiet or emotional on my mom's death anniversary, she'd sigh and say things like, "Babe, you can't live in the past forever. It's not healthy." Once, when we passed by the hospital where my mom spent her final days, I reflexively slowed down the car. Natalie looked out the window, then muttered, "Should we wave at her ghost or something?" I remember my hands tightening around the steering wheel. I didn't respond, because deep down, I told myself she didn't mean it. She couldn't. I mean, this was the same woman who held me when I cried on Mother's Day, who sat next to me while I lit candles at my mom's grave, who helped me sort through old photo albums and said, "You really loved her, didn't you?" So how could that Natalie be the same person making fun of my grief in passing comments? It messed with my head. I started thinking maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I was reading into things. Maybe it was just her sense of humor. She often told me that. "You're so serious sometimes, babe. Lighten up." But grief isn't something you lighten up about. Especially not when the person you're mourning raised you, protected you, shaped you. Still, I let it slide. Again and again, because I was too afraid to admit the truth. That love from the wrong person can sometimes feel like a slow unraveling, and by the time you realize you're undone, they've already tugged the thread halfway out. When we started planning the engagement dinner, I only had one request. I wanted to include a small framed photo of my mom at the venue. Nothing flashy. Just something subtle at the table. Her favorite picture, the one where she's wearing that blue scarf and laughing so hard her eyes disappear. Natalie paused when I brought it up. "You mean, like a shrine?" I laughed awkwardly. "No, Nat, just a photo. She's not here, but she should have been." "It's important to me." She gave me that look, the one that's half smile, half warning. "I just think it's weird. This is our night, babe, not a memorial service." I didn't respond right away, because there was something in her tone, dismissive, almost mocking, that hit like a slap. She saw me flinch, walked over, wrapped her arms around my waist. "I'm sorry," she whispered, voice sweet now. "I just don't want you to be sad that day, you know? I want you present, happy, with me." And just like that, she spun it, turned it into a gift. Like she was doing me a favor by erasing the one person I desperately wished could be there. That night, I called my sister. Told her what happened. She was quiet for a second. Then said, she doesn't want a dead woman stealing attention. That's not love, that's control. I got defensive, instinctively. No, she's just trying to make sure I enjoy the night. My sister didn't argue. Just said, okay. But one day, you'll look back and realize how many pieces of your mom you gave up to keep her happy. That line sat heavy in my chest for days, but I didn't bring it up with Natalie again. I let it go. I told myself it wasn't worth fighting about, because I still believed she loved me. But here's the thing no one tells you. Love without respect is just possession in prettier packaging, and I was already being wrapped up and bowed. The night of the engagement dinner, I felt nervous, but a good kind of nervous, like maybe everything was finally coming together. I had chosen the restaurant myself, a cozy little place with brick walls and soft jazz playing in the background. It wasn't just any restaurant. It was the same one I took my mom to for her birthday 5 years ago, the last birthday we celebrated before the cancer returned. I didn't tell Natalie that. I didn't want her to roll her eyes or ruin it. My family arrived early. My sister, her husband, my dad. Even he made the effort to show up in a suit. That meant something. We hadn't always been close, but tonight, we were trying. I tucked the small photo of my mom into the inside pocket of my blazer. I wasn't allowed to place it on the table, but I needed it with me. Needed her with me. Natalie was the last to arrive. She walked in wearing an all-white lace-covered dress that clung to her like a wedding gown. Heads turned. She liked that. She blew kisses, posed for photos with her friends, and didn't even notice that my dad had stood up to greet her. She kissed my cheek and whispered, "Told you I'd steal the show." And she did. All night, she was loud, animated, dramatic. Every laugh a little too sharp. Every joke made someone uncomfortable. Her friends ate it up, my family. Not so much. At one point, my sister leaned over and asked, "She always like this in public?" I didn't answer, because part of me didn't know anymore. And part of me didn't want to admit how much of her I had been excusing behind closed doors. I thought maybe once dinner started, things would calm down. Maybe once we sat together, we'd share a quiet moment, a meaningful toast. Instead, I was about to hear the one comment I would never, ever be able to forget, the one that turned this night from a celebration into a grave I'd bury my patience in. I stood up near the end of the meal, glass in hand, heart pounding. I had rehearsed the toast in my head 100 times, kept it simple, meaningful. Just a thank you to everyone for being there, and a quiet nod to the woman who wasn't. "My mom isn't here tonight," I began, voice trembling slightly. But everything good in me came from her. So if I ever become the kind of partner Natalie deserves, it's because of her. I looked down at Natalie, expecting maybe a smile, a tear, something. Instead, she smirked and raised her glass. "Oh, here comes the ghost story." Laughter, from her friends. Not mine. My hand froze midair. For a second I thought I'd misheard her. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe she didn't mean it like that. But then she leaned back, eyes twinkling with mischief. "Come on, babe. Let's not turn the engagement dinner into a seance." The air shifted. My sister's jaw clenched. My dad narrowed his eyes. A few people awkwardly coughed. I forced a smile, finished my toast, and sat down. But my chest felt like it was cracking open. Natalie leaned over and whispered, "Relax, I'm just trying to keep things light. No one came here to cry about your mom." I stared at her, stunned, not just at what she said, but at how easily she said it, like my grief was a party buzzkill, like the woman who raised me, who saved me, was some joke she was tired of hearing, and still. I said nothing, because part of me still didn't believe what was happening. Part of me kept thinking she'd see my face, realize she went too far, and apologize. She didn't. She laughed again and raised her glass toward her friends. "To new beginnings," she said loudly, "and leaving old ghosts behind." That was the moment my love for her started to die, and something colder, something far more final, started to take its place. The rest of the table tried to move on. Forks clinked against plates. Conversation started up again, awkward and forced. But I wasn't really there anymore. I sat beside Natalie like a statue, heart hammering in my ears, face frozen in a tight smile. She carried on like nothing happened, laughing, sipping wine, showing off her ring to her friends as if she hadn't just stomped on something sacred. I tried to ground myself, touched the inside of my jacket where I had tucked away my mom's photo. I ran my fingers over the frame's edge like a lifeline. And then Natalie leaned in. She smiled sweetly, the same way she always did before saying something cutting. And then she whispered, "Maybe now you can finally marry me. And not your dead mom." My whole body went still. I didn't even blink. It wasn't a joke. Not this time. There was no just kidding smirk. No playful nudge. Just cold, flat dismissal. Like my grief was a rival she was tired of competing with. I looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time, I didn't see the woman I fell in love with. I saw someone who viewed empathy as weakness. Someone who saw love as control. My sister caught my eye from across the table. Her expression shifted instantly. She mouthed, "Are you okay?" I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. Because I didn't want to cause a scene. I didn't want to ruin the night, even though it was already ruined for me. I excused myself quietly and walked to the bathroom. Not because I needed to use it, but because if I didn't leave that table, I was going to explode. Inside the restroom, I stared at my reflection. I looked calm, too calm, like a man suppressing a scream, and in that silence, a thought crept in like a whisper. If she could say that now. What would marriage look like? That wasn't the moment I walked away, but it was the moment I knew. I had to. I splashed cold water on my face in the restroom, trying to slow down my pulse. My mind kept replaying her words, like they were etched into my skull. Finally marry me, and not your dead mom. I had been swallowing my grief for years, folding it into corners of myself where no one could see. But now it was roaring. I wasn't sad anymore. I was furious. I walked back to the table, ready to fake the rest of the night just to get through it. But before I could sit down, my dad stood up. Now you have to understand, my father is not the type to make speeches. He's a quiet man, stoic, grew up thinking emotions were private business. I'd never seen him confront anyone in my life. But tonight he cleared his throat and said, "Before we move on, I want to say something." The table hushed. Even Natalie looked caught off guard. "My wife raised a son who loves deeply, who carries people in his heart long after they're gone," he said. "If you think grief is a joke or a weakness, you don't deserve him." It was like a pin dropped in the room. Natalie tried to laugh it off. "Oh, come on, it was just a little joke." "No," my dad interrupted, calm but firm. "It wasn't. And if you don't see why, you're not ready to be in this family." I stared at him, stunned. Everyone did. He'd never defended me like that. Not even when I needed it as a kid. And in that moment, I realized two things. I wasn't crazy for being hurt. I wasn't alone. I wasn't the only one who saw it. But even with that unexpected support, I had no idea just how far Natalie was willing to go next. After my dad spoke, the energy around the table cracked. Natalie went quiet, just for a minute, but her eyes darted from face to face, scanning the damage like she was calculating what to salvage. She laughed again, louder this time, trying to smooth it over. "Wow, so serious. I guess grief really does run in the family," my sister gasped. My cousin shook his head, but Natalie wasn't embarrassed. She was irritated. Like we'd all overreacted to her comedy special. I stood up. "I need some air." Her voice followed me as I walked away. "Don't be so dramatic, babe." I didn't turn around. Didn't say another word. I walked outside into the cool night air, hands shaking, and for a moment, I stood alone on the sidewalk staring at the streetlights, trying to remember how I ever loved this woman. A message popped up on my phone. My best friend, who'd arrived late and was sitting at the bar, had seen everything. "You good?" That wasn't okay. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Another text came in, this time from Natalie. "Come back. Don't ruin this night." I worked so hard on it. That one hit me harder than the rest. She worked hard on the night. Not the relationship. Not understanding me. Not repairing what she'd just shattered. Just the night. The image. The performance. I realized then that everyone inside expected me to come back and finish the act, smile, toast, pretend nothing happened, because that's what I'd always done. Even Natalie was sure of it, but what no one expected, what not even I knew until that moment, was that I was done performing, and I wasn't going back in to play the fool again. Stood outside for 5 full minutes, breathing, thinking. Could still hear the clinking glasses and muffled laughter through the restaurant walls. My chest was tight, but my mind was finally clear. I walked back in, not to return to the table, but to end the performance. Natalie looked up, smiled like nothing had happened, and said, "There's my runaway groom." I didn't smile back. I picked up my glass, tapped it with a fork. The room fell quiet. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," I said calmly, "but I won't keep you much longer." Natalie tilted her head, confused. "This engagement," I continued, "is officially over." Silence. A sharp intake of breath from someone near the back. My sister froze mid-bite. Natalie blinked, then laughed. "Wait, what?" I turned to her, voice steady. "Any woman who mocks my mother, dead or alive, isn't someone I'll marry. Any woman who ridicules grief, who makes a game out of love, doesn't belong in my life." Natalie's jaw tightened. "Are you kidding me right now? You're doing this here?" "I gave you chance after chance," I said, pulling the small photo from my blazer and placing it gently on the table in front of me. "She deserved to be here." "And so did the version of me who believed you cared." I kissed the photo, turned toward my family, nodded, then walked out. I didn't look back. Not once. Behind me, I heard chairs scrape, gasps. Someone murmured, "Good for him." And for the first time in years, maybe in my whole life, I felt something deeper than relief. I felt free. But of course, she wasn't going to let me walk away that easily, not without trying to destroy what little peace I'd just claimed. The next morning, my phone exploded. Texts, missed calls, mentions. Natalie had gone nuclear. Her Instagram was flooded with carefully curated photos from the dinner, just her and her friends, all smiles and champagne. The caption? "When your fiancé walks out because you won't let him marry his mom's memory, dodged a bullet." She turned my grief into a punchline. Again. Only this time, the internet was her audience. Her story posts were worse. Screenshots of my messages, taken out of context, painted me as emotionally unstable, obsessed with the past, and unfit for a mature relationship. Mutual friends started messaging me. Some were neutral. Others asked, "Did you really walk out over a joke?" And for a moment, I doubted myself. Was I overreacting? Was I broken from grief? Did I blow up a future over one dinner? But then I got a message from someone I hadn't heard from in over a year, my mom's best friend, Linda. All it said was, "Saw what happened. She would have been proud of you. You did right." I broke down reading that. It wasn't just validation. It was a reminder that my grief wasn't irrational. That love doesn't require sacrificing your soul just to keep peace. Still, it hurt. Deep. Because even when you know someone is wrong for you, it doesn't make the ending any easier. Especially when they twist the knife on the way out. I deactivated my socials. Shut it all down. I couldn't stomach watching people laugh at my pain and in that quiet digital blackout. I hit my lowest point. I wasn't angry. I wasn't crying. I was just numb, and when the world goes silent, you start to hear your own voice again. That voice told me, "You lost something, but you escaped more." The silence was strange at first. No constant notifications. No staged photos. No forced conversations, just me. I spent the next few days doing something I hadn't done in years, thinking about what I needed. I booked a therapy session. I walked in still unsure, thinking maybe I was the problem, that maybe grief had twisted me into someone too fragile to love, but within 10 minutes, my therapist said something I'll never forget. "You weren't grieving wrong. You were grieving alone." Those words hit like a tidal wave. Natalie had never made space for my pain. She had only ever asked me to shrink it, to box it up, to tape it shut so her version of our life wouldn't be uncomfortable. I began piecing things together. Every joke, every dismissive look, the way she loved the idea of me, but resented the parts she couldn't control. I pulled out a letter I'd kept sealed in a drawer for years. One my mom wrote before she passed. She'd asked Linda to give it to me when she thought I'd need it most. Inside, in her soft cursive, she wrote, "Marry someone who doesn't just smile in your sunlight, but stays in your storms. Someone who doesn't fear your sadness, but holds it gently. That's love." I cried for a long time because I realized I'd come so close to marrying someone who couldn't even sit in the same room as my storm, let alone walk through it with me. Losing Natalie didn't break me. It uncovered me, and the man I found underneath, he was stronger, not because he left, but because he finally understood he was worthy of more. Natalie never apologized. Not once. There was no late-night text, no tearful voicemail, no moment of realization where she took accountability. And maybe that was the final lesson. Sometimes closure isn't a conversation. Sometimes it's choosing not to answer the knock at the door. I heard through mutuals that she got engaged again, barely 6 months later. To someone with a big Instagram following, a matching aesthetic, and I assume a heart just hollow enough to keep up. I didn't feel jealous. I didn't feel angry. I felt nothing. And nothing is powerful when you've spent years drowning in too much. On what would have been our wedding day, I visited my mom's grave. I didn't wear a suit. Didn't bring flowers. Just a small photo of her, same one I'd carried in my blazer that night. I sat cross-legged on the grass, fingers tracing the edge of her name carved into stone, and whispered, "You would have hated her. Thank you for saving me." The wind blew soft and cool. The kind of breeze she used to say meant someone was watching over you. I don't believe in signs, but I believe in peace. And that day, I finally felt it. I've started dating again, but this time I'm not rushing to fill silence. I've learned how to sit with it, how to honor what hurts, how to wait for something real, because I know now. Love isn't loud. It doesn't mock. It doesn't compete with memory or demand the erasure of who you were. Real love walks beside you, through the past, through the pain, through the healing. And when it comes again, if it comes again, I'll be ready. Not because I'm perfect, but because I'm whole.